This is the 5-Minute Podcast Review for Friday, December 2, 2016. And first cab off the rank is Audio Long Reads. So this is one of a number of podcasts put out by The Guardian newspaper, known for its in-depth feature articles. But how often do you have the time to sit and read a long feature article, much as you might want to? But with the Audio Long Reads podcast, some of The Guardian's best feature articles are read for you, while you can go about doing the things you need to do during your day, driving, cleaning the house, whatever. In fact, it was in the supermarket where I listened to a great 37-minute read called Still Ticking, which went in-depth on why people still spend hundreds of thousands, even millions, on analogue Swiss watches. If you've ever wondered at those magazine ads for crazily priced Swiss watches like Rolex, Patek Philippe or Tag Heuer, then you'll find this long read interesting. But there's heaps of other long read articles covering a huge range of topics from dementia to the popularity of Ugg boots. So look up Audio Long Reads podcast and it's a safe bet you'll find more than a few articles to play when the piped music in the supermarket isn't doing it for you. Podcast number 2 is 99% Invisible. You may have heard of it, but this is a great podcast series that just keeps on delivering. The title, 99% Invisible, refers to the many things we encounter in everyday life, often ordinary things like barcodes or revolving doors that have just become so familiar we barely notice them. They've become, in other words, 99% invisible. But the backstory, the way they came to be, is what each episode of 99% Invisible focuses on. Take those blow-up inflatable dancing men you see at used car sales yards and other places where retailers are trying to attract attention. Here's part of the setup from episode 143 of 99% Invisible on the origin story of those crazy inflatable men.
I want you to go ahead and try to imagine an origin story for these things. Used car salesman buys some tarp and a leaf blower and messes around in his garage? No. Slighted bounce house designer goes rogue, determined to show them all? No. The real story behind these is so much better. And it all starts with this guy.
I am Peter Minshaw, born in 1941. The world was at war, so were my parents, as a result of which I was taken in my mother's womb to Georgetown, Guyana, where I was born in the General Hospital in the embrace of her family and brought back to Trinidad shortly thereafter in her arms.
So that's the setup, and if you want to hear the whole story, check out episode 143 of 99% Invisible. But hopefully you get a sense just from that brief clip of the quality of production and storytelling that goes into each episode of 99% Invisible. There's currently over 230 episodes up, each running 20 to 30 minutes. Anyhow, that's 99% Invisible. If you haven't checked it out, it's worth doing so. Podcast number 3 is You Must Remember This. I've just discovered this podcast series and it seems really impressive. It's a heavily researched and lushly produced exploration of the secrets, scandals and forgotten histories of Hollywood in the 20th century. And the feed includes mini-series focusing on subjects like the 12-part Charles Manson's Hollywood. Each episode is written and presented by Karina Longworth, who is an LA-based film historian, and here she is introducing the Charles Manson's Hollywood series.
Over the course of this series, we'll tell the stories of how Manson ended up in Los Angeles and of his relationships with and connections to all manner of show business figures, from Polanski and Tate to the Beach Boys, to Kenneth Anger, to Doris Day, to John Waters. In this episode, we'll start by talking about what else was going on in the company town of Los Angeles in the late 1960s, setting the scene that the Manson murders blew apart. And then we'll briefly detail what those murders were, who was killed, and when, and how. Join us, won't you, as we learn exactly what it is that we talk about when we talk about the Manson murders.
So that's the intro to the Charles Manson series, but there's over 80 other episodes of You Must Remember This, which go way back to stories on the likes of Joan Crawford, Judy Garland, Humphrey Bogart, Marlon Brando, Howard Hughes and Frank Sinatra, through to episodes on more recent Hollywood players such as Barbra Streisand, Sean Penn and Madonna. So go have a look at You Must Remember This. Check out the website also, and if you don't end up subscribing, you'll probably at least want to download a few of the episodes, maybe one of the mini-series, and I'd recommend Charles Manson's Hollywood is a good one to start with. Podcast number 4 actually continues the Inside Hollywood theme. It's called I Was There Too, and it's a novel concept where host Matt Gawley interviews people connected to the making of blockbuster Hollywood movies. But it's not the big names he interviews. Instead, Matt tracks down the bit players, the extras, and the others, including crew members who just happen to be on set for the shooting of a famous scene, or maybe for the entire shoot. These people give a fascinating fly-on-the-wall account of what it was like to be there. If you want to sample an episode, try the Raiders of the Lost Ark episode, which is an interview with Steven Spielberg's personal assistant for the shoot. Aside from insights on some of the famous scenes from that film, you'll also get a unique perspective on what it's like working up close and personal with Spielberg. So that's podcast number 4, called I Was There Too. Last podcast for this episode, podcast number 5, is Homecoming. This is an interesting one to watch, or I should say listen to, because it's a full-on experiment at bringing scripted fictional drama to podcasting. Now, Homecoming isn't the first fictional podcast series out there, but it definitely takes things to a whole new level in terms of the scripting, the production, and the name actors, including Catherine Keener, David Schwimmer, and Amy Sedaris. Homecoming is a psychological thriller, and I guess you could think of it as a bit like the podcast version of a well-made HBO or Netflix series. But that's probably not doing it justice. It's its own thing, a podcast genre that maybe doesn't yet have a name. Definitely, though, the producers want it to be called anything but a radio drama, which they think of as stodgy and staged. Homecoming has no narration or forced exposition. Instead, as listeners, we become aware of the mystery simply by listening in on conversations and phone calls. Here's a few seconds from the teaser, just to give you a bit of a feel for how Homecoming works.
Beginning November 16th, Homecoming.
Order up patty melt, onion rings, and a Caesar salad.
Order in.
Hey.
The guy in the booth asked for his check.
Oh, okay, got it.
Starring Catherine Keener, Oscar Isaac, David Schwimmer, David Cross, and Amy Sedaris.
So how was everything? Here.
Wonderful stuff.
Good. Anything else?
No.
I'll be right back with the check.
Oh, say Heidi, yeah? That's your name?
Yep. Just like the name tag says.
Have you been working here long, Heidi?
About 4 years, I guess.
You are Heidi Bergman, right? That is your last name?
Yes, do I know
I'm
you?
Thomas Carrasco. I work for the Department of Defense. You worked at the Homecoming Initiative.
Well, yes, that was years ago, but what is this?
Heidi,
what is this
I just have a few questions for you.
I don't really
How
have
long
any
did you
time.
work at the Homecoming Initiative?
Wait, can we? I have a break. Can we talk outside?
Sure. Right now?
Yes, out back. I'll meet you there.
Okay,
I'll be right there.
So season 1 of Homecoming has 6 weekly episodes, and it's interesting that each episode so far is less than 30 minutes, which I think is a clever move and will help make Homecoming easier for many to slip into their podcast listening routine. Up till now, it's really been non-fiction that's dominated the podcast format. So in that sense, Homecoming is a pretty bold experiment, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Well, that's it. Another 5 podcasts in, well, let's face it, a bit more than 5 minutes. I'm starting to realise this 5-minute thing is probably more of a metaphor that kind of really means less than 10 minutes. Anyhow, links to all podcasts covered in this metaphorical 5-minute episode should be on your screen, along with an email address if you want to contact me for any reason. Definitely if you want to let me know about a podcast I should cover. I'll speak to you next week with 5 more podcasts. Thanks for listening.